Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're reading They're Overprotective by me. And a side note, I really want you guys to write any ideas you have for me to do in the comments so I can check them out. With that said, let's get into the video. Midoriya. He's a hypocrite to be so worried about you and not himself, especially when most of the time it's him who ends up in the hospital. So really, he was one to talk. He tries to be rational about his worries and respect your choices, but it's difficult for him. He overthinks everything, and when he's not around you, or you're in hero work, he always worries himself. What if you need help? What if you're in danger? He knows that you're self-sacrificial, though not to the same extent, of course. You had some brain cells, unlike him, you would say, and he had to agree on that, but he also knew that if he had to choose between your life and civilians, he knew what your answer would be, and it hurt him, but he could never talk about it, because being put into the same situation, he would do the same thing. He would sacrifice himself just to make people happy, and that hurt you too. Eventually, you taught him how to get help when he needed that, and that you would be promised to be as careful as you could be and to ask for help if you needed that, just so you could laugh and see each other smile another day. Bakugou, despite him acting uncaring and saying that he doesn't care if you get hurt, and that it would be your fault because you were responsible, he really does care. And the guilt would seriously eat him up if something happened to you, especially if there was something you could have done. And in most cases, he would think so. If you two are patrolling together, he would try to defeat the villains as quickly as he could, and you won't give them a chance to lay a hand on you, to the point where it makes you feel incompetent, because he's so much better, and he's leaving nothing for you to do. You would talk to him about that a lot, and he would apologize, but sometimes his worries get the best of him, and he can't help but be protective over you. If you two spar, he would go easy on you, for fear of hurting you too much, and if someone even annoys you just by words, or someone talks about you badly when you're not around, they are really gonna regret their life choices. He loved you to the moon and back, and he would not let anyone hurt you, words or otherwise. He was extremely protective, and would try to get you to stay away from dangerous missions, or would go with you just to keep an eye on you and interview when you had to. And though it was hurtful sometimes, you understood where he was coming from, and eventually he too tried to understand you and tried to give you some space to prove to him that you aren't weak and that you're strong enough to fight by yourself without anyone's help. Todoroki. He understood that you had potential, and he admired your strength, and he really believed in you. But it wasn't enough to stop his worries. After all, you meant the whole world to him, and he couldn't lose you. Not after all what happened. You were the only person he could be vulnerable with. The only person who would stay up at night and talk to and cry with. He trusted you to no end, and a selfish part of him wanted to shield you from the world. He wanted you all to himself, to be forever with him, and also to be never hurt again. He would fight with you if you get hurt too much, when you end up in the hospital, and then his strong, stern voice fades into soft sobs as he cries into his hands and mumbles about how scared he was of losing you and how you couldn't handle it if it really happened, and how this could happen a second time, and the next place won't be the hospital. He would hold on to you, begging you to be careful, because he couldn't handle losing you. After the incident, he would try to be with you in every mission. He would be extremely overprotective, hold you as much as he could, and sometimes he wouldn't sleep until you're back home with him, even if it affected him, even if it was dangerous to his health. He just wanted to make sure you're okay. Eventually though, you get better, and his worries fade away, and you two trust each other, and he trusts you enough to face the dangers in your work on your own. Iida tried to be logical, but you also worried him a lot. You never tried to call for help, so it was either you beat the villain or you got hurt. And in some cases, it ended up really badly, like this time. You're in the hospital, your arms and legs all covered up with bandages, and you could only stare, not being able to help. You never knew it would hurt so much, to see the person you loved so much, in so much pain, and not be able to do anything about it. It was tearing him apart. If he cried, he didn't let it show. He wanted to be strong in front of you, to show you that he would be there to protect you from all harm. He was a hero, and yes, you were too. But since he loved you, wasn't he allowed to be your hero? So, when you got better, he suggested the most respectful way of protecting you, and yet letting you do your work. He'd invite you and his friends to spar. The game was simple. If you couldn't win the battle, call for help. It was extremely difficult for you though, but with time, you eventually knew just when to call for help, and you was extremely happy and relieved afterwards, knowing that you're way more safer, and that he could help you just like he was supposed to. Shouji isn't actually overprotective, despite seeming like the time to be so. He trusts you and believes in your skills, and your ability to assess the situation correctly. Although he would still try to go on most missions with you. If he can keep an eye on you while you're doing a mission, then he doesn't mind. But in most cases, he has immense trust in your abilities and knows you can deal with that. But if a huge fight occurs, he would do his best to take you away from the scene, and he'd put his life on the line just to make sure you keep yours. He knew he wanted to protect you, but he also knew that it wouldn't be so fair to you. But in a situation like this, nothing was off limit, and he would do anything to keep you safe. Shigaraki, now this boy, is extremely protective. And well, there wasn't much that he wouldn't do to make sure you're okay. He would defy his sensei just for you, if it meant you would be safe. You felt like family to him. You provided him with love and affection and everything he'd once wanted. And even if you couldn't give it back the same way you had given it to him, he would at least try to protect you, because he'd lost his family once, and he wouldn't lose you too. If you're in a battle and someone even dares to touch you, he would make sure that their death would be nice and slow, just for you. Dabi, it would take a lot to make you emotionally attached to someone, and if you really got that far, to the point where he really loves you and can't lose you again, then you wouldn't allow anyone or anything in the world to take you away from him. You wouldn't care who you hurt or what you had to do to keep you by his side. And sometimes you would get annoyed by it because he overreacted. He was overly emotional at times, despite trying not to be, but you couldn't help it. He was emotionless in the face of everything else. But when it came to you, he was vulnerable. You were his only weakness. You were the only person who would make him want to cry when you couldn't, and laugh, and feel again, and he wasn't willing to lose you to anything, even if it would make you hate him. Dabi would do everything just for you. Sero was pretty chill, but he won't deny that there are moments where he just gets a little bit too overprotective for you, and sometimes to the point of it being annoying. He doesn't mean it. He really doesn't. He just worries about you. You were his love, so it was only fair he worried. He loved you, so of course he'd never want to lose you. He would have nightmares that you died because he couldn't save you or wasn't there with you. It hurt so much because you couldn't know. You couldn't know if it would be true today, or tomorrow, or a month later. Being a hero was dangerous, and he knew you loved it. He loved it too, and you could never stop you from doing something you loved. But at the same time, he couldn't imagine living without you, and for the sake of that, sometimes he would follow you when you were going to a mission, without your knowledge. You found out later, and you got pretty mad at him for doing that, but once you understood, you had tried to talk to him. You held him in your arms as you talked about it, and if you cried, you pretended not to notice. You understood his pain because you had experienced it too. You worried about him the same way he had worried about you all the time, and you were so relieved that he told you about it. You hugged him and you assured him that you would do your absolute best to be there with him forever. After all, you really did love him, so you wouldn't want to be leaving him anytime soon.